afternoon. You're tuning into the news updates on DGN. We're coming to you live from Stephen Amate Close, Nima. I'm Leila Sharu, and these are the headlines. Ministry of Health intensifies disease surveillance interventions in flood-affected communities to prevent disease outbreaks. Also to come this afternoon, 38,809 people displaced, 7 missing after Monday's heavy rain in Greater Accra. Meanwhile, minority demands probe into anti-flood task force operations. Nigerian cyber fraud suspect wanted by Interpol FBI arrested in Accra. Also, oil marketing companies slash fuel prices as GOIL leads with petrol at 12 cedis 79 pesos. We have the details of our top stories coming up. Please stay. And now with our first story, the Ministry of Health has intensified disease surveillance and public health interventions in flood-affected communities across Accra to prevent outbreaks of waterborne and other communicable diseases. In a statement, the ministry said Health Minister Kwabena Mensah Kando visited affected areas including Circle, VIP, Niboy Town, and the Achimota-Alajo and Aloboshi communities to assess the situation and supervise emergency health measures. The minister has directed the Ghana Health Service to strengthen disease surveillance, intensify community-level intervention, and scale up public education on disease prevention in all affected districts. The ministry also urged metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies to enforce environmental sanitation measures while advising residents to clear choked drains, remove stagnant water, and maintain clean surroundings. Food vendors have been reminded to observe strict hygiene standards, and the public has been advised to drink safe water, wash hands regularly, eat well-cooked food, and seek immediate medical attention if they develop symptoms of illness. The ministry says the situation remains under control and has assured the public of uninterrupted healthcare services in affected areas. Now, still on the floods, the Minister for the Interior, Muntaka Mohammed Mubarak, has provided a comprehensive account of the destruction caused by Monday's heavy rains in the Greater Accra region, revealing that more than 7,700 households were displaced, while 7 people remain missing. Delivering a statement in Parliament on Tuesday, June 30, the minister said the downpour inundated several communities across the capital, disrupting economic and social activities and affecting thousands of residents in 18 metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies.
25 communities were affected. There are 18 assemblies that were largely affected by the Monday, rains. We have a total of 7,761 households that were displaced, with 38,802 individuals affected. 7 people, as of this morning, were displaced, and the total death are 12 individuals that we lost. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to send our condolences and that of government and the people of Ghana to the families that lost their family members, and we assure them we are with them in this difficult moment. We know many people could not be in their homes and even sleep in their homes, but government is doing whatever it can.
Also, the Minister for the Interior, Mohammed Mubarak Muntaka, has disclosed that Ghana recorded its highest monthly rainfall on record in June 2026, attributing the devastating floods that hit parts of the Greater Accra region to an unprecedented volume of rainfall. Addressing Parliament on Tuesday, June 30, the minister revealed that the country recorded 593.2 millimeters of rainfall in June, the highest monthly total ever recorded since rainfall data began being tracked in 1995.
This was something that was a difficulty for us as a country. I must admit, Your Excellency, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the statistics that we received from the Ghana Meteorological Agency, it clearly states that in the month of June, we normally expect a lot of rains. But what happened yesterday gave us 169.2 millimeters of water. and this is the fourth largest volume of water in a day since 1995. And for the month of June, we had a total in month of June of 593.2 millimeters of water. And Mr. Speaker, is the highest our country has ever received in its history in 1 month, 593.2. The closest was in 2002, and that was 420.6 millimeters. And the other one was 2015, 380.3 millimeters. And these statistics, Mr. Speaker, I'll make it available for the House, are the things that, so it clearly shows that, yes, the human activities, pouring, refuse into our drain, building on waterways, all contributed. But naturally, it clearly shows that even if we had everything right, the kind of rains that we received in June and yesterday will have necessarily created some overflow and created some problem for us.
Meanwhile, the minority in parliament says Monday's rainstorm exposed government lack of adequate plan, despite an anti-flood task force which he contends did not produce any meaningful intervention on the ground. Addressing a press conference on Tuesday, Minority Leader Alexander Penyumaking alleged that the establishment of Gold Board and the Bank of Ghana's Gold for Reserves program had entrenched illegal mining activities, contributing to environmental degradation that has exacerbated flooding. He argued that the government should be held accountable for what he described as policies that contradict its campaign promises to tackle illegal mining.
Now, let me go back to the task force that existed on paper and on paper alone. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, last year, His Excellency the President announced the establishment of an anti-flood task force, specifically charged with preparing the capital for the rainy season, chaired by his Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations, Mr. Stan Jose Dogwe. The public was assured that lessons had been learned and that the year would be different. Yesterday's flooding is the clearest evidence that this task force produced no meaningful intervention on the ground. If serious drainage works, the silting or flood mitigation infrastructure had been undertaken, the impact of the rains, however heavy, would have been measurably reduced. Instead, entire neighborhoods went underwater, exposing the gap between government rhetoric and government delivery. Now we see a pattern, not an accident. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this was not the first flooding incident of the year. Weeks earlier, significant parts of Accra were already inundated. The government that had genuinely prepared for the rains would not need to commission a new assessment after the damage had already been done. The need for an after-the-fact presentation is itself an admission that no adequate plan existed beforehand.
Now, the minority in parliament has called for a full parliamentary investigation into the government flood preparedness task force, arguing that its failure to implement meaningful interventions contributed to the devastating floods that hit part of Accra on Monday, June 29. The minority leader, Alexander Penyumaking, said the flooding exposed what he described as the ineffectiveness of the anti-flood task force announced by President John Dramani Mahama in 2025 to prepare the capital for the rainy season.
We contend that given the scale of this failure, statement of regret and after-the-fact relief packages are not sufficient. The minority is calling on this House to establish a parliamentary committee specifically mandated to investigate the conduct of the flood preparedness task force and the relevant government ministries and agencies in the lead up to this disaster. That inquiry must establish what work, if any, the task force undertook since its establishment, what funds were allocated to it, and how they were spent, what specific mitigation measures were planned and implemented, and why none of this prevented or meaningfully reduced the impact of foreseeable seasonal flooding. Those found responsible for negligence or dereliction of duty must be held accountable. Pending the outcome of this inquiry, the minority demands that all members of the task force step aside from their roles. This is not a presumption of guilt. It is a basic standard accountability that any institution facing serious questions over its conduct should observe, so that the investigation can proceed without interference, and so that those under
Now, the Minority Caucus further pledged its support for government proposed $300 million Ghana cedis, I beg your pardon, flood relief package, but is demanding strict parliamentary oversight and full accountability for how the funds will be spent. Minority Leader Alexander Honyomakin said the caucus support the effort to provide emergency assistance to victims of the recent flood, but stressed that every cedi allocated must be accounted for. He argued that while emergency relief is necessary, it cannot replace long-term measures needed to prevent recurring floods.
We contend that given the scale of this failure, statement of regret and after-the-fact relief packages are not sufficient. The minority is calling on this House to establish a parliamentary committee specifically mandated to investigate the conduct of the Flood Preparedness Task Force and the relevant government ministries and agencies in the lead-up to this disaster. That inquiry must establish what work, if any, the task force undertook since its establishment, what funds were allocated to it, and how they were spent, what specific mitigation measures were planned and implemented, and why none of this prevented or meaningfully reduced the impact of foreseeable seasonal flooding. Those found responsible for negligence or dereliction of duty must be held accountable. Pending the outcome of this inquiry, the minority demands that all members of the task force step aside from their roles. This is not a presumption of guilt. It is a basic standard accountability that any institution facing serious questions over its conduct should observe, so that the investigation can proceed without interference, and so that those under scrutiny are not left to oversee the very response to a crisis their own inaction may have worsened.
We'll be back with more stories after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still tuned in to the news update on DGN, and I'm Leila Sharu. Let's do more stories now. A joint cybercrime operation involving the Cybersecurity Authority, the Ghana Police Service, Interpol, and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation has led to the arrest and prosecution of a Nigerian national over suspected transnational financial crimes. The accused Aderinsola Oluwanifemi Adeleye was arrested following investigations into fraudulent point-of-sale transactions carried out at fuel stations in Accra using compromised U.S. Citibank debit cards. Investigators say he was identified after suspicious transactions were traced to Hacho Shell and also Total filling station. Two fuel pump attendants allegedly linked to the scheme also assisted investigators. During his arrest, the police recovered a Citibank debit card, a Beretta pistol loaded with live ammunition, and during subsequent searches, additional ammunition and several electronic devices believed to have been used in the alleged offenses. Authorities allege the suspect obtained thousands of US dollars through fictitious fuel purchases and invested the proceeds in properties, including a house, a cement block factory, and a vehicle. The accuser has been arraigned before court while investigations continue to identify other members of the suspected international cybercrime syndicate and trace additional assets believed to be proceeds of crime. Now, the government is taking steps to ring-fence the debt of the Tema Oil Refinery, despite the state-owned refinery recording a profit after tax of 1.24 billion Ghana cedis in 2025. According to the Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Abdullahi Jenapo, the move is intended to clean up TOR's balance sheet and position the refinery for long-term financial sustainability and growth. Speaking at the 18th Annual General Meeting of TOR in Accra, Mr. Jenapo said the government is committed to transforming the refinery into a commercially viable institution capable of attracting investment and strengthening Ghana's energy security. He explained that although TOR's financial performance has improved, its debt burden remains a major obstacle to securing financing for future operation and expansion.
One of the key challenges has to do with your liabilities. It makes your balance sheet impaired. And when your balance sheet is impaired, it's difficult to raise financing. And as if the Minister of Finance knew what was happening. He's asked me to get one of the audit companies, PwC or any of those companies.
Now, some oil marketing companies have begun reducing fuel prices at the pumps in line with industry projection. Market leader Goa has reduced petrol prices from 13 cedis 87 pesos to 12 cedis 79 pesos per litre. Diesel has also been reduced from 15 cedis 95 pesos to 15 cedis 35 pesos per litre. Another major player, Star Oil, says it will soon cut prices at the pumps. The company said petrol is likely to be sold at the price floor announced by the National Petroleum Authority. Several other OMCs have also indicated they will move quickly to reduce prices. There are currently more than 200 OMCs operating in Ghana. According to the NPA, no OMC should sell a litre of petrol for less than 12 cedis 79 pesos. Now, this follows the regulator's announcement of new price floors for the first pricing window of July 2026, representing a reduction from 13 cedis 39 pesos in June. The NPA also reduced the minimum price of diesel from 15 cedis 11 pesos to 13 cedis 54 pesos per litre, representing a 10.4% decline. Liquefied petroleum gas also recorded a significant reduction, with the minimum selling price falling from 13 cedis 23 pesos to 10 cedis 11 pesos per kilogram, a decrease of 3.12 or 23.6%. Let's do some sports now as Erling Haaland scored on 86th minute winner to send Norway to. Kylian Mbappe scored twice and Michael Olise was in scintillating form as France beat Sweden 3-0 at the World Cup and set up a last 16 clash with Paraguay. Mbappe finished a superb move to break the deadlock just before a halftime on Tuesday in the last 32 tie, watched by 80,663 at New York, New Jersey Stadium after France had already hit the woodwork twice, once through Mbappe and once through Olise. The 2018 World Cup winners France will face Paraguay, who showed Germany the exit from the competition through a 4-3 penalty exercise.
And that was good defense. Running gets the other side of Stroud. Played back out here to Koundé, Dembele. Michael Olise wants to hit one. Olise saved by Think started inside his own half. 1v1 with Svensson. On it goes to Michael Olise. France in for another. That's brilliant from Zetterstrom. You've got to. Koundé makes that run really impressively, doesn't he, into the opposition box.
It's a great point, Fletch.
That's Dembele's cross, and that's he can play all of the positions in the final third. Lovely ball into Koundé. France threatening again. Not about enjoyed the back heel. Barkala plays it inside to Olise. Back it goes to Barkala. They're in again!
Let's now turn our attention to the foreign front, where Uganda's political crackdown is intensifying, with opposition leader Kizza Besigye appearing in court on treason charges as concerns grow over a widening assault on dissent. Besigye told the court the trial could not proceed while his lawyers feared for their own safety after one of his lead attorneys was arrested earlier this month. The opposition veteran has been in detention since he was abducted in neighboring Kenya last year. The crackdown has been driven by General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the son of President Yoweri Museveni and head of Uganda's army. In recent weeks, he has ordered the arrest of activists, politicians and lawyers while drawing international criticism over his increasingly hardline actions. The latest target was one of East Africa's biggest independent media groups whose newspapers, television and radio stations were shut down by soldiers over the weekend. However, the company says it is now in talks with the military to reopen its Ugandan outlets, although staff remain locked out of their offices as pressure mounts on authorities to restore media operations. Now, lastly, Nigeria's latest repatriation flight arrived in Lagos on Tuesday, carrying 269 nationals fleeing South Africa. Anti-immigrant groups in the country had issued a June 30 deadline for all undocumented foreigners to quit the territory. South Africa has seen a wave of anti-immigrant protests and violence in recent weeks that's left at least 4 people dead. But it's not the first time foreigners have been targeted, says Sandy Oreis, another repatriated Nigerian. The citizen-led anti-migrant groups blame undocumented migrants for rising unemployment, crime and increased pressure on public services. Now, this is the third group of Nigerians returning to this month. More than 600 Nigerians have brought home out of the more than 1,000 who have registered for the voluntary repatriation. More flights are expected in coming days. The returnees will undergo documentation, profiling and medical screening before receiving temporary accommodation and other assistance. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has rejected the so-called deadline, saying only authorities can enforce immigration laws. That'll be all for this afternoon's update. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back at 6:30 p.m. with the latest report. This update is brought to you by Telecel Ghana and, of course, powered by Press Express. I'm Leila Shari. Do have a good afternoon.